Hello. Today we are going to read two posts from the same blogger on Tumblr. Her username is Blue Rotundas. So she made a really great post about separatism, and then later on she received a inbox message from an anonymous person asking a follow-up question to that post. So I'm going to discuss or read and share both because I think they're great. So Blue Rotundas wrote, "When we have conversations about female separatism, I often hear women express genuine anxiety that by separating from men sexually, domestically, and socially, they will be alone. There is a general sense, especially but not exclusively among opposite sex attracted women, that separatism requires the sacrifice of something essential to women's happiness or even sense of self. I would encourage women who have this fear to reconsider the view of separatism as more separation from males, instead as an abolition of what Janice Raymond calls hetero-reality, the worldview that women exists always in relation to a man." In Abolition Democracy, Angela Davis writes of abolition. That is to say, it is not only or not even primarily about abolition as a negative process of tearing down, but it is also about building up, about creating new institutions. Although the context of the original quote is referring to prison abolition, I believe that this framework for abolition can also be usefully applied to the concept of female separatism as a tool for abolishing hetero-reality. I find Davis's definition of a constructive abolition liberating. In the context of hetero-reality, female separatism functions not only in the negative sense of tearing down the parasitic relationship that men have to women, but also in a positive sense of building up community and a sense of primacy in female relationships. This is what I believe Janice Raymond means when she writes, "In the mathematical sense of origin, women must be centers of movement, of genuine motion, toward each other and not merely away from oppressive situations with men. Hetero-reality functions, in part, to create and maintain the myth that women lose something by separating from men. In effect, the fear generated by this myth, a fear which is nurtured on every level in our society, functions to keep women available to men through the assumption that female relationships can never be as fulfilling as hetero relations, and this does not exclusively apply in the sexual sense." Raymond writes, "Hetero-reality, the societal given that male-female relationships are the really real ones for women. In any society, revolutionary or traditional hetero relations are the only bonds that receive social, political, and economic sanction for women. In hetero-reality, female friendship is regarded as second-rate, insignificant, and often preliminary to hetero-maturity. It follows, then, that in order to abolish the myth that women need men, women must find each other. According to Raymond, hetero relations have thwarted and defanged the true liberating potential of feminism by defining feminism as the equality of women with men rather than the autonomy, independence, and love of the female self in affinity with others like herself, her sisters. Instead, women's liberation is achieved on men's terms and in relation to men, which is not very liberating at all." Raymond writes that female friendship threatens male dominance over women's lives. If this is true, then friendship between women is key to abolishing male supremacy, not in a strictly negative sense, but as a method of collaboratively creating something better for women than the standard men have set. Female separatism is the political made personal. Female friendship as a conscious political act for the liberation of all women. If separatism frightens you because you believe you will be lonely, remember that women together are not women alone." This author, Blue Rotundas, then received an anonymous message, and I wanted to share it because it's a follow-up to that post. The anonymous person said, "In response to your female separatism post, may I ask, and if you could please not see this as a question asked in bad faith, but tell me, what is the purpose for homosexuals fighting for the right to fall in love freely with the same sex, have sexual relations with the same sex, and marry the one they love who is of the same sex? What is the purpose of lesbians getting into relationships with each other, and what is the purpose of gay men getting into relationships with each other? Can a lesbian find all of her fulfillment with just her career, hobbies, interests, traveling, friends, family, pets, and so on, without having to be with another woman intimately ever again in the name of feminism? Blue Rotundas replied, I appreciate the question, and I understand where opposite-sex attracted women are coming from when asking this. It may seem unfair to consider that liberation for women may require that opposite-sex attracted women practice celibacy. However, I think you missed the point of my post. I would counter with the following question. What is the purpose of women being in relationships, intimate or not, with men? What is the purpose of women organizing their lives around men? My contention is not just that straight women will not be missing out on anything meaningful when they practice separatism. My point is that separatism can actually create meaning in women's lives. This meaning is female friendship. It is the value of the self. See Janice Raymond's A Passion for Friends. And it is a political self-consciousness of women as full human beings who can exist and thrive without men. Your question is still rooted in the fear that living without men will cost you something essential. The question you have posed is not relevant to the discussion of separatism because homosexuals are not oppressed as a class by their partners through intimate relationships. There is no equivalence between straight women practicing separatism as feminist action and homosexuals being isolated from one another and punished for our same-sex relationships for centuries. To insinuate that these situations are comparable is not only short-sighted, it falsely assumes a heterosexual dynamic that does not by definition exist in homosexual relationships. As a side note, I get the sense in these discussions that many opposite-sex attracted women have very little idea about the realities of their lesbian sisters. The reality is that many lesbians do find all of our fulfillment in just our careers, hobbies, interests, travels, family, pets, and especially friends, without ever being sexually or romantically involved with another woman. Lesbians have been finding meaning in our lives through close female friendships for centuries because we cannot always find each other by virtue of patriarchal grooming and what Adrienne Rich calls compulsory heterosexuality, and punishment when we do dare act upon our sexual orientation. Lesbian women are intimately familiar with the feelings of loneliness and loss that comes with a stifled or stigmatized sexuality, so it should say something that we are often the most ardent proponents of female friendship and solidarity.